All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Joining us live here in the studio today, our next guest speaker is Chief Warrant Officer Andy Bonvie, the CANSOFCOM Sergeant Major. He has served for over 3 decades in the infantry and the special forces, and he'll no doubt have some wisdom to impart on all of us. Mr. Bonvie, thanks for being with us today. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here today and actually to represent the NCOs at the symposium as well. The NCO Corps, as you know it, leading today's NCMs and leading tomorrow's NCMs are very important to us. We do a lot of education pieces on this, and as a matter of fact, right now on the senior appointment program, we're have a lot of good dialogue involved around this. So with my topic today, leading tomorrow's NCMs today, the outline for today, as you can see it there, NCMs of today, tomorrow, and then the NCMs expectations of the chain of command, pushing power to the edge, and then the discussion and questions and answers in the back end. So NCMs of today and tomorrow. On the onset, what I'd like to do is actually describe to you what an NCO is in today's military. It's changed quite a bit in the past. What we're looking at now for today's NCOs, since about 2003 with the release of Duty with Honor and the professionalization of the NCO Corps. So the two corps, the professionalization of the Officer Corps and the NCO Corps. What this has done is it's created a lot of ownership of the NCOs and the dedication and buy-in for the NCOs into the NCO side of the house. Today, about 30% of the NCOs have education at the university or college level. And also most NCOs are part of a double income family or relationship. The common theme for all NCOs that join the military is that they want to be employed in the trade and be operationally deployed to practice their craft. They want to be empowered by the chain of command. They want to be part of that decision-making process, and they want to be involved in planning and to find innovative ways to tackle problem sets. They want to be part of the team, but they also want their individuality respected and supported. They join for reasons that may only last a few years, and then they want to explore something else. They avoid long-term contracts. They don't want to be fixed into a 25-year contract. Most are looking at being engaged for a 3-year contract. They continuously ask why. It's important for us that when we give direction that we actually follow through and we give the why, and then we get their buy-in. They continuously challenge the status quo and look for new ways of doing things. So that, as we call in the soft side of the house, that relentless pursuit of excellence. They want to be aware of upcoming events and totally being surprised, as this gives them anxiety and stress. They do endorse our policy changes, as such with the beards, boots, and the marijuana policies and integration into the Canadian Armed Forces. So this change and institutional alignment with societal norms, which is very important to them. They want to be part of a collaborative effort looking for opportunities to employ their skill sets and resolve issues. They like shared responsibility in decision-making process, and they want to be empowered to take action or resolve issues. Today's NCOs also want to be recognized for their contributions and their achievements. And they want career management that's transparent and honest. So what I'll do next is move on to the expectations of the chain of command by the NCOs. What they're looking for in their leadership today are role models that are accountable, knowledgeable, humble, trustworthy, and represent them well. Socially aware is also key, that we know about their families, their friends, their social events, and their personal activities. They want us to be transparent in career managing and co-planning with them. They want to develop a plan together. They want leaders to admit to making mistakes. And they want leaders to make hard decisions and articulate the reasoning behind them. Early engagement is important to them, and they often, as possible, want involvement and collaboration in the approach to solving problems to get better buy-in from their community. The most positive of all has been the fact that when it comes to operations and being deployed, they crave to be able to do the job what they've been trained for. And they really want that employment to be able to do their jobs and get the satisfaction of being involved and being part of a solution to a problem set or to a mission. As I reflect on some of the soft truths from my community, the humans are more important than hardware. They want to understand that their best interest, not only theirs, but their families are being looked at the same time and considered. And that quality is more important than quantity. It's important that as we look at things like recruiting and evolution, that we actually concentrate more on the quality portion than just more quantity coming into the forces. And these shine through when our people are given that final exercise and being able to deploy and use those techniques, practices, and procedures that they master within their unit lines. I'll move on to my next slide. So on this is a slide that was developed by General Rouleau, actually, when he was the commander of CANSOFCOM. This was our way of effectively communicating how flat of an organization CANSOFCOM is and pushing power to the edge. Realizing that when you push power to the edge, it's, you know, the commanders have the authorities, but they push the responsibilities down to the lower levels, and then the accountabilities go up from the NCOs all the way up to the political level. When we send a team leader over from CANSOFCOM at a sergeant level, they could be commanding a team downrange. What's very important to know, though, for a sergeant within CANSOFCOM, we're looking at an average of 34 years and 68 years of unit experience on top of that. So there is a different dynamic from some organizations to be able to push power down to those lower levels, but that's just an illustration there of being able to do that and that trust that goes along with it. The trust has to be established from the chain of command at the pyramid all the way down. Once you lose that trust and confidence, it's very hard to regain that initiative. So what I look to do now is I'll close on my presentation and then look to get into the discussion and question and answer. Thank you.
All right, outstanding. Thank you very much. Mr. Bonvie, we'll carry on now with our fireside chat format here in the studio. Everything you said resonates with me, certainly the leader, and I'm sure many of our, if not most of our folks out in the audience would agree. Those soft truths, I think, also apply, many of them apply to the Army as well. And your point about enabling our people, pushing power to the edge ties in nicely with what General Rouleau was talking about this morning. And we want to get the most out of our NCOs and our troops, right, and enabling them to thrive. Absolutely. So we'll go over to some questions. Before we get on with the questions from the crowd, I just have, I'd like to ask you, what suggestions do you have for our NCOs out there to bring out the best in their people?
I think the biggest thing is being able to engage with the NCOs. The NCOs and actually junior officers really love the face-to-face engagements. They have to be able to hear from the commanders and from the chain of command throughout the direction. And the more that it's said and the more that it permeates downwards and it's consistent is very important to them. So it's just engage early, engage often, I think are the keys to that effective communication at all levels.
And would you agree with John Rouleau when he said we need to over-communicate, if anything, err on the side of talking more and getting more out there with our troops and our people?
Yes, you know, you cannot communicate or over-communicate. I think that being able to reinforce and use different modes of multimedia nowadays, and as well as physical presence, for that two-way dialogue is very important. And no, I do not think you can over-communicate, and I agree with General Rouleau.
Right on. Okay, so our first question comes from Captain Pete Little, and he says, little emphasis is placed on mission command and junior NCO development. For example, PLQ, AJLC devotes more of its TP to the lesson learned processes than mission command. Do you see mission command as something that should be central for junior NCOs as an overhaul of the development training to emphasize this so as to enable our junior leaders to understand their mission, task, and role in the operation, enabling greater decentralized command and control in the dispersed battle spaces of the future? Sorry for the long-winded question.
It's actually one of the things that we do, and I think it's very effective within SOF, is being able to do COA development. And within the COA development, every section is given a task to look at and to be able to develop. And then they actually present that to, in this case, it would be a platoon commander. And then from there, the platoon commander can look at all those different COAs, which everybody within the different section has a responsibility to participate in and actually add input into the planning process. So you get buy-in at all levels, from the most junior to the most senior levels, to come up with the best plan, which is then the plan that's chosen by the officer in charge. And then from there, everybody marches on that one set of orders. So that's a very effective way to have all the NCOs involved in the planning and to look at a problem from different lenses. The more experience you get in the military, it seems the more myopic you become. And so some of those opinions and some of the ways to problem solving certain aspects are innovative at the lowest levels and give us some opportunities to explore some innovation within how we tackle problem sets of the future.
All right, thank you very much. Our next question comes from Warrant Officer Mike McIntyre. Sir, is the pay gap between NCMs and officers still relevant today? Specifically at the MWO Chief Warrant Officer level. That is from Warren McIntyre at 67 Battery of the Artillery School.
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the programs going on right now within the CAF is CAFJUS, which is looking at every MOSID and evaluating the pay. Trying to look at the new initiatives, instead of using spec pay, actually put all the occupations on a spectrum and then determine what the pay level should be. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it's been delayed and it probably won't deliver till fall of 2021. But I think that's a great way ahead for us. And there is discrepancies of pay levels. If you look at a senior chief warrant officer, what they make, I would say that we're looking at this right now, and we're trying to come up with a more equitable pay solution, because right now it's not.
Okay. Our next question comes from Chief Warrant Officer Bob Beaudry. Succession planning and talent management, coupled with mentorship and capacity, can achieve amazing results in ensuring our young leaders reach their full potential, not only within the Royal Regiment, but within the CAF as well. What advice would you give to young NCM leaders out there that are sometimes not being fully supported by their supervisors or subunit command teams in order to achieve that breadth of knowledge required to reach these senior positions within the Canadian Army and the CAF?
I think the best piece of advice I could give would actually be, don't be afraid to engage others outside of your chain of command. If you know others that are in different elements, or you have questions, there's organizations within the CAF like DMLC that you can actually reach out to and talk to the career managers. One of the things that, you know, when I was a private in the military and I saw a chief warrant officer, I would do my best to run the other way or get out of his line of sight, because that was just the day, and that's the way things were done. Today, we actually look and we want people to engage us. We want you to ask these questions to us because we want to pass on that knowledge. So do not think that you cannot approach and talk to other chief warrant officers, other senior members within your chain of command, or outside of your chain of command, because it's very complementary, and we have to look at things on a holistic effort nowadays because of our size and the challenges that we're faced with developing new capabilities. A lot of these things have to be done on a joint effort. They cannot be done independently because the resources are so scarce. And I'm not just talking about money, I'm talking about people, capabilities. And this goes for not only national defense, but even national security as well.
Absolutely. Our next question comes from our director, Colonel Sonny Hatton. What are your thoughts on social media use and chat apps like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp? And how do you balance OPSEC in a contested information environment?
Very good question.
I think so too.
And, you know, social media is a great platform, but as everybody knows, as you're a member within the Canadian Armed Forces, you are responsible for what you not only say, but for what you post. And you have to be cognizant of that, because it reflects not only on you, but it reflects on the whole of the Canadian Armed Forces. It can be used effectively. We're looking at it for recruiting. We have new initiatives out there that we're utilizing to increase awareness of opportunities, not only within CANSOF, but within the whole CAF. So it can be used effectively. You see it now with COVID. You know, the CDS and the DM have multiple engagements that are available to all levels of the chain of command and to the families. And it's used effectively. So it is a good tool when it's used effectively. It's just we have to reinforce the fact that we really have to watch what we post, as we're responsible for that content.
So when can we expect to see some CANSOFCOM recruiting ads on TikTok?
I don't know about TikTok, but I know that we're looking at Facebook.
Okay.
And myself being a digital immigrant and not as used to it as the millennials though, but we're not targeting folks like myself for recruitment. We're actually looking at using innovative media ways to reach our target audience as well.
All right. Next question is coming from Warrant Ackroyd. With the pay level relook, are they looking into the skills and qualifications people are bringing to the battle space and not just the unit you belong to? I'm assuming that refers to the levels of pay like land duty allowance and the soft allowances and things like that.
Yeah, I can't speak to the land duty allowance, but we do know that if we do want to retain people, which is in the majority of my time when I'm working with personnel, is I'm in retention, looking at how to retain talent. Because once we train people in the Canadian Armed Forces, we want to retain that talent pool, because it's important to us moving forward that we have the right people with the right training and we retain them. Money is not the only thing, it's the employment and the job satisfaction. I think a lot of times we get really focused on the monetary side of things, and we're not actually studying what means the most to people, which is that job satisfaction, the employment to do their jobs and to be part of the solution space and the problem solving side of the house. So yes, money's important, but if you look at what a member of the Canadian Armed Forces makes in comparison to the civilian population, we're doing fairly well. And in times with COVID right now, it's very important that we recognize the fact that we're looking at a lot of people that aren't within the public service that are losing their jobs right now as well.
Yeah, oh, that's a fair point. And I think we've hit a nerve here with all these pay and benefits questions, because this is the third one here I'm seeing up on the screen. From my good friend Jeff Brownridge down at the 5e RCA. Do you think the current CAF NCM NCO system that ties pay to leadership through promotion works for today's soldiers? Or do you think a similar system to the US Army specialist grades would work in Canada?
That's a good question. And one of the reasons for it is we were actually discussing a while ago about two different streams within the NCO Corps. One would be more on an SME side of the house, and the other ones would be more on the leadership side and advancing upwards in ranks. And being able to come up with a equitable process that would be able to support both. and pay people that want to be those subject matter experts and still have advancement and still have that pay associated to qualifications. So we are looking at those innovative ways of doing things. I would have to tell you, though, that everything that's tied to Treasury Board moves very slowly. You know, just like Capt right now, it's impacted by COVID, and a lot of the Journey initiatives, and when we're talking about opening up the National Defense Act, these are things that take longer. So being able to discuss them and work through them, but then actually articulating the timelines that go along with them to be able to make changes in those areas are important.
All right. Our next question is not related to pay and benefits. It's from Master Bombardier Guazou Gallant. And he's asking, with your experience leading soldiers from different trades and unique backgrounds coming together from different corners of the CAF, what are some of the leadership challenges that are experienced within a small team or detachment within your unit, which may differ from other units within the CAF?
I take this from the other side. I actually think that it's a great benefit for us to have that dispersed knowledge in different trades. I've worked with everybody on the operator side and on the assaulter side. Some have been clerks in their former trades. Some are from the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army. And all those different MOSSETs coming together and those different qualifications give those unique perspectives to enable the small teams when they're downrange, because you're looking at a 6-man team deployed or a 6-person team deployed, and everybody brings something to the table that's different than the others. So the more diverse teams with the more diverse skill sets, the more diverse environmental backgrounds actually enables us. It doesn't hinder us, and it doesn't really create a whole lot of challenges, because now we do have the 3 occupations within CANSOFCOM. So before, when we were a managed specialty, it did create some issues for us, but now with the 3 trades, it's much more manageable.
Yeah, and I would just echo on that. I mean, my experience in civil military cooperation in Afghanistan was primarily a reserve staffed team. And similarly, you know, we had a diversity of backgrounds, because most reservists have another career, or they're students, or they're coming from all over the place. And definitely we were able to tap into a lot of those different backgrounds that you don't normally see, you know, in the regular force. So yeah. I can relate to the diversity being a great thing. Our next question is coming from my good friend, Justin Brunel, 8-9er at 2RCHA. What are your thoughts on a systematic overhaul of second language skills in NCO career progression up to MWO?
This is a question that we've been looking at as a whole, is actually making sure that we're meeting the requirements for this. As we progress up the ranks, the one thing that I will say with the succession planning for the NCOs that I do, as we grow older, it's much harder to learn things, especially second language. So early exposure to second language, I found usually the sweet spot is sergeant to warrant for the introduction, trying to get your second language, or get that entry level, at least A's, if not B's. And then as you progress later in ranks, trying to be able to give that second exposure to get you to the next qualification before you end up, much like myself as a chief warrant officer, 50 years old, going on a second language course. That is not setting somebody up for success.
Yeah.
So as good leaders, what we do is look at how not to make the same mistakes with those underneath us, and then give them opportunities much earlier along to develop them in a much more logical sequence.
Okay, thanks for that. Our next question is coming from Mr. Joe Foote. You mentioned that NCOs in this day want short-term engagements, looking at that 3-year vision and stretching out to 5 years perhaps. So is the CAF keeping up with the societal changes for engagement offers on recruitment and re-engagement to keep members happy and also to maximize retention?
I would say we are keeping up, we're adapting, and based off the members' career desires and aspirations, really coming up with the plans and that projection. Like right now, if I look at the senior NCOs and I sit them down and I talk career management with them, they want to know their next 3 moves, where they're going to go to, what their succession plan is for 3 years or 3 positions out. And when you look at some of the millennials, you know, you ask them what their long-term aspirations are, and they just will tell you what they want within the next year. So very different dynamic. And that's the one challenging thing for us is, you know, doing that career management cooperatively together is understanding sometimes if you only give me a year, I can't really commit to you being able to be succession planned into that next position. So we have to try to come up with a compromise to be able to look at a longer term. And then it's always based off of performance at the same time. So, you know, based off your aspirations and your performance, this is where we can get you to. So it's a very cooperative process.
That's a fair point. And, you know, it reminds me of something that Lieutenant Colonel Steve Hare once told me when he was the G3 of 2 Brigade and I was working for him. And he said, John, anything someone tells you about your career more than 1 year out is a lie. Not deliberately, but just, you know, we live in a kind of chaotic, and by nature, it's a chaotic profession and things are always going to change. So, you know, you need to be adaptable and agile with all those changes that come your way.
Yeah, I like to illustrate it as the first year is written in pen, the second year is written in pencil, and the third year is on a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Very close though.
Okay, our next question is coming from Lieutenant Colonel Eric Ross from CANSOFCOM. What advice would you offer junior officers being posted into an artillery regiment in forming effective command teams with their troop sergeant majors and vice versa?
A very good question. Thank you, Mr. Ross. I cannot express enough the importance of command team relationships, and even at the lowest level, right down at the troop level, you know, at the platoon level, it's important for that cohesive command team between the warrant officer and the captain, and then all the way up the ranks throughout the other different levels of command. But, you know, when you look at a warrant officer and their background and their amount of time in their profession, and that coupled with a highly motivated young officer coming out of their institution at the same time, that is a very effective command team together. When they're joined together, when they operate separately, not very effective. They complement each other very well. It's to find the strengths and weaknesses of both and then complement them together. At all levels, the openness and ability to discuss things away from the troops, and then when you present yourselves back in front of your troops as a one command team with one vision going forward, very important. So what I would offer that young officer is I would say, listen to the advice, you make the decision, and then from there, the troops will follow you.
Right. Our next question is from Lieutenant Colonel Derek Crabb. I guess this would be a question from the outside looking in from the infantry and the SOF background, but obviously interacting with people from the artillery within SOF. His question is, in the artillery, like the other combat arms, our master bombardiers and sergeants are first levels of command, followed by troop, battery, and regimental commanders. And are we properly preparing our master bombardiers and sergeants for command?
I would say that through the OSIT institution, a lot of the career courses we have now at the warrant officer level, we are doing really good conjoined training and education of the NCO Corps. The ability to look down and into the different regiments is a little bit harder for us. What I would say though is the crosstalk that could happen at the regimental level and being able to tap into each other and see what we're doing for our senior NCO development at the sergeant level is there. We have to be better at reaching out and asking each other though. And, you know, a lot of the processes, the baseline has not changed, but what has changed is everything that surrounds it, more education with the and more interaction. It bringing outsiders into your courseware and giving their perspective is amazing. A lot of the same problems that are going on within and challenges within the different regiments are shared across the board. So you have to look outside of your own institution and look at others to see what challenges and how they're solving their issues, and not only try to solve it internally, but look externally for that advice and that cooperation to get around those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's critical to cross-pollinate and see best practices elsewhere, what other people are doing right, where other people are making mistakes, and make sure, we take the best things and don't make the same mistakes. For sure.
I know within our environment, we look at the NATO soft countries, we look at the Five Eyes countries, and as pretty much everybody knows, there's been challenges for all the major countries with some of their operations in the past. And what we have to do is learn from those experiences and then apply that within ours to ensure our culture remains strong and that we continue to produce the quality of NCOs that we are today.
Okay. So our next question is coming from Sergeant Manage at 20 Field Regiment. Do you believe that officers should have to be an NCM first? Interesting question. This way they better understand where NCM recommendation and ideas come from.
I would say no. And the reason for that is one of the points that I failed to mention at the onset is that there's many NCOs that have higher levels of education and have no desire to be officers. And the reason for that is some people want to be master technicians. They want to be masters at their craft, and they don't want to go up the chain of command. So an officer, for the most part, is coming in, they're going to master their craft at their different levels and keep moving up the chain of command. So as an NCO, it gives you more opportunity to stay at different rank levels longer to master and decide if you want to be part of that evolution and participate in the chain of command or not.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And working with other government departments where they don't have this kind of different streams with officers and NCMs and everything else, just to mention, like the RCMP, for example, to get to be an officer in the RCMP, you have to start at the bottom and work your way up, right? Where you don't necessarily have that the planning from the beginning of your career and that kind of mindset. So no, I think we've got it right.
Yeah, and I think that it complements each other, where you're looking at the experience of the NCO, and that coupled with the leadership of the officers is what makes Canada a very effective player, especially with the command teams moving forward, very effective. If you look at the top right now with the, General Vance, and you've got Chief Petty Officer First Class Gregoire, that is a very effective, diverse command team and represents the Capt very well.
Agreed. Okay, well, Mr. Bonvie, thanks very much for being here and answering all these questions. We're out of time now. This is it. We're going to take a 10-minute